Hey, my Transformers out there, what if I told you the same technology you use to beat your nephew in Fortnite could also save lives? Yep, we're talking virtual reality, but not just for gaming. Today, we're diving into how VR is revolutionizing mental health care for veterans. And tell me, well, first, let me tell you, it's not your grandma's therapy session unless she's into virtual combat scenarios. Stick around because my guest today is a pioneer and he's crushing it in the VR therapy world. And what's he's sharing will blow your mind. Forget everything you think about when it comes to therapy. This is new next level stuff.
And we'll be right back. Come with me, let's rap. Take a trip and we back. And we'll be right back. I stand for what you stand for. Hey, I get on the mic and I transform. Follow me on this world tour. The asteroid that you can't avoid. Follow me.
Okay, welcome back to the Transform You Live show, the podcast that's all about empowerment, transformation, and sometimes asking why the therapist is wearing goggles. I'm your host, Marcus Hart, and today we have an absolute legend in the world of mental health innovation. Joining us today is Dr. Skip Rizzo, a clinical psychologist, director of medical virtual reality at USC's Institute for Creative Technologies, and someone who spent the last 30 years proving that VR is more than just a fancy way to play golf indoors. We're talking PTSD, trauma, resilience, and how veterans can find healing in ways that'll make you say, wait, what? Dr. Rizzo, welcome to the show. And man, your resume is so impeccable that I get tongue twisted trying to get it all out.
Well, thank you so much for that kind introduction.
Yeah, all right, Skip. So let's dive in. How did you go from being a clinical psychologist to the guy saying, let's stick people in virtual war zone and call it therapy? Walk us how you do that in your work of virtual reality and how it has evolved over the years, and specifically what inspired you to focus on veterans.
Well, there's an old saying. It goes, if you want to make God laugh, tell her your plans. And this was something that I hadn't really planned. It just happened. And it happened organically from my work at the time in the early 90s in brain injury rehab, where I was working with people who had traumatic brain injury or stroke and trying to help them recover their function. And I was just frustrated with the limitations of the tools at the time. And one day, one of my clients comes in, 22-year-old male, frontal lobe injury, and he goes, Skip, I got to show you something. I go, what is it? And he goes, it's a Game Boy. And it's like, what? And he pulls this thing out and he starts playing Tetris. And I'm watching him glued to this thing for like 15, 20 minutes. This is a guy I couldn't help him maintain his focus for more than 5 minutes on any kind of traditional rehab task. Half of that stuff is really boring and repetitive and frustrating and all, helping people recover their attention skills, their memory. Anyway, he was glued to it, and he was becoming a Tetris warlord on top of it. He was really good at it. And that was the first light bulb that went off. It was like, all right, if we can gamify this kind of difficult rehabilitation activity, we might be able to get people to do more of it and to recover their function. And then a little bit later, I actually saw the movie Lawnmower Man. I don't know if you were around back then, but it was
I heard of it.
Well, it was one of the first VR movies, riffing off of a Stephen King novel. And it was directed by Brett Leonard, who actually I have the great luck to be working with now.
Wow.
But he produced this movie, and it really showed what virtual reality was about, except it was a little bit far visiony in the future. And so once I saw that, I said, if we put VR together, if we build these simulations that you can put people in to help them practice their memory skills, practice their attention, their executive function, all that, we're going to be onto something. So I started to look into it and learn more about it. And finally, in 1995, I ended up going to USC with the prime reason to build a lab that would focus on developing this stuff, because the technology back then was very primitive, very, it was complicated. Computing wasn't where it's at today. And so you had to be at a university to be able to develop this stuff. So I got in, luckily, and I met some computer scientists that bought into the idea, and then it was off to the races. And we started developing these skill building VR activities for mental rotation, visual spatial abilities, all these kind of cognitive functions that we could test pretty well, and learn about it. And then I got my first head mounted display and built out a virtual classroom for children that we could put them in, kids with ADHD, and developed ways to better assess their functioning in a realistic environment, immersive environment. And then, I was struggling to keep the lab afloat. At any university, you have to bring in grants.
Yeah.
And then, so we started doing a lot of different things. But then the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan started to really heat up. And I saw that PTSD was going to be a real problem. And I had worked with Vietnam era veterans in my clinical training. And I said, let's use VR as a tool to deliver this evidence-based approach of exposure therapy. And I was able to get the funding back in 2004, 2005, that period, to be able to build it out. And that was when things really started to take off, even though VR was still relatively primitive. You had these limited, 40-degree field of view headsets and 800 by 600 resolution, but it was enough to activate people's emotions in a therapeutic context. And so we started using it. We started running clinical trials, and we documented the value of applying VR in this particular area. So that was the first half of the career getting started. Since that time, done a lot of work with artificial intelligence, with virtual humans, developing virtual patients for clinicians to practice clinical skills, novice clinicians, developed applications for people on the autism spectrum to help them develop social skills. We developed a number of physical therapy, game-based applications like the Tetris thing, but we're tracking motor movement and being able to put people in a gamified environment to practice their physical therapy. That stuff it's boring, it's repetitive, it's frustrating because you're missing some of your skills due to the stroke or the injury or whatever. And that's part of the work I'm doing now with Brett Leonard, developing applications around physical therapy, developing some stuff for autism, for cognitive assessment. And so the work has gone full circle from what I was doing my clinical practice work into now developing these applications that can, now that VR has arrived. I mean, look at, the two things you can say about VR is the technology has caught up with the vision we had in the 90s. Now we can do that stuff. And the second thing is we've got a giant scientific literature that documents where this stuff really adds value in the medical field. And it does, I mean, we still got a lot of science still to do, and we got to continue. I mean, science never sleeps. We're going to keep evolving, but we know we're onto something here, and scientifically we can back it up.
Man, that's truly amazing, man. And it's a breakthrough, like, for where it came from the mid 90s to now. VR went from like almost like these blocky graphics like Minecraft and motion sickness to like helping someone like me who wants to confront those deepest fears or don't know how. Honestly, the only virtual reality I had in the 90s was pretending to understand algebra, which I still don't get. But I really want you to break this down for our listeners who might not be as familiar with VR therapy. Like, what are some specific ways VR is being used to address PTSD? You mentioned there's work out there, and I got a chance to peek at it, but this stuff is really incredible for trauma and other mental health challenges veterans face. And feel free to sprinkle in some stories that like make our jaws like totally hit the floor if you want to.
Well, when you think about the process, I mean, we're not like inventing like some new process. We're inventing a better tool to deliver what we already know the science supports as a clinical process. So, with trauma and with anxiety disorders generally, exposure therapy is one of the evidence-based approaches where you help a patient to confront and reprocess difficult emotional memories, but in a safe place. The traditional method is close your eyes and imagine, you're in that war zone, or you're on that tall building looking over the edge, and that's a tall order for some people. You're trying to ask people that have been spending months, years, decades avoiding thinking about the thing that hurt them really badly and asking them to do it in their imagination. So, and you never know what's going on in the hidden world of imagination. So we build out these virtual worlds that mimic the trauma, but at a pace the patient can handle. And so they go in and they're in an environment where it's not that provocative, but it gets them a little anxious a little bit, but they can process it, they can deal with it. And then you gradually ramp it up, and to the point where they're confronting this stuff. They're talking about stuff they've never talked to anybody about, because it's an emotionally evocative technology. And so, we've seen many veterans, and now we're working with people in Ukraine, and also sexual trauma survivors now using the same approach. And it's we start off by saying it's hard medicine for hard problems, because it's not easy therapy to experience. But once you see somebody kind of get over that hump, then you see them all of a sudden feel some mastery over something that has, tamed them for all this time. Now they are in charge. They're starting to feel empowered. They can talk about things. We're not making the memories go away. They'll always have these difficult memories, but we're making it so it's easier for them to cope with those memories, to think about them in a way that is more, I don't want to say productive, but they're more capable of dealing with. And so that's one of the ways one of the big areas in VR in mental health is employed. It's helping people to confront things that they typically avoid at a pace they can handle. And we got an emotionally evocative technology. Let's face it, psychologists, that's what we're in the business. We're in the business of activating emotions and helping people process those emotions.
Yeah, and just to invite the listeners and viewers in more closely, like we're talking about combat scenarios, mindfulness programs, and even virtual humans helping with social skills. And to some people, they wouldn't even imagine that VR is out here doing more than, for a lot of them, than most of their exes ever did for them. But seriously though, man, that's groundbreaking. And before we get into the other side of this conversation, which is, I'm very pulled in, and I know the listeners are too. We're gonna take a quick mid-break roll for some sponsor type stuff, and we'll be right back.
Ready.
All right, before we dive deeper, let's talk about earning while you sit on your couch and shop online. Imagine, man, making money every time your friends, your family, and neighbors just shop online. No need to imagine, because I tell you one thing, it is totally real. I'm crushing it, and people that I put on is crushing it, and you can get in on it too. Earn while you shop, passive income, make money online. Don't sleep on this opportunity. Learn more by clicking the link in the description. Now, back to the show. So we're back, everyone. I had my coffee break, and I got a chance to check in with Skip, and he's doing okay. Skip, one thing I really appreciate about your work is how it addresses accessibility. Let's talk about the barriers veterans face in assessing mental health care, especially VR-based therapy. How does technology like yours, the markerless motion capture, help eliminate some of those challenges?
Well, this is like the innovation that we're working on at Ubiquity VX with Brett Leonard and a whole crew of people that are really talented. And what we're trying to do is to employ uh, like a browser-based approach to be able to make the applications more available to people, whether it's in their home or in various clinics. And a lot of times, clinics that don't have a heck of a lot of technical expertise, you got to make it easy. Give you a good example here. The VA, the Veterans Affairs hospitals around the country, they've adopted VR significantly. They get that it matters, and veterans like it. I think number one, you got the science. Number two, it works. The veterans like it, and it makes it so the VA has polished up their image a little bit. They're not
Yeah.
your dad's VA anymore. They're really using state of the art technology to make a difference, and so they went into it full bore. But the challenges they face, it isn't in the science, it isn't in the buy-in, it's in how do you train a population of clinicians and disseminate all this content
Yeah.
across almost 200 VA medical centers around the country, the largest healthcare network in the world, basically. And so it's that unsexy, pragmatic element that is
Hmm.
really the bottleneck or the challenge. I wouldn't say a bottleneck, but it's challenging. And this is where Ubiquity comes in, where by developing this browser-based approach with a system that can deliver some VR applications on any computer, any flat screen monitor. I mean, you're not wearing a VR headset, although our software system will be able to deliver things in a VR headset, but you can send a link to somebody in their home and click, they're on it, and they're in a VR world on a big smart TV. And the markerless motion tracking, which is, cameras come standard on these systems now. So that camera, any regular, camera that's on your laptop, even on your phone, if you wanted to use your phone, is able to capture your body movement and engage that interaction within the VR environment so that you can start to do physical therapy, range of motion, reaching, interacting with
Yeah.
content on this big screen in your home or on a screen without the headset. Now, I will say that our system is being geared towards being able to drive a similar, easily accessible process in a VR headset because there are applications where you have to have that full immersion. But there are many applications that have a powerful healthcare benefit that can be delivered in this flat screen mode. And by having this tracking system that allows
Hmm.
you to interact with the content, you're really pushing embodiment in a VR world by fostering high fidelity activity and engagement and interaction. Because there's three things in VR, three I's: immersion, interactivity, and imagination. And
Yeah.
you can make up for what you might not get with what you might not deliver in an immersive environment by fostering high fidelity interaction. And that's where the markerless motion tracking approach really comes in. We're trying to democratize the accessibility of these kinds of VR applications, to get it out the door, get it in people's homes, get it in clinics that might not have a heck of a lot of technical expertise with VR headsets and so on. And that's why I'm excited about this, working
Yeah.
with Ubiquities. I've been in the lab for all this time. I'm at a point in my career. I want to kick stuff out of the lab. I want to get it in people's hands. So that's what gets me excited every day.
Yeah, spring cleaning is right around the corner, and I love that like this tech removes so many different hurdles for people. And let's be honest, Skip, man, nobody wants to spend 30 minutes attaching motion sensors before therapy, and we're trying to heal. That's how a lot of veterans like myself feel, like, man, let's give it, let's get it to the point. We don't want to audition for the Matrix Reloaded. So
Right. You got it.
yeah. So looking ahead, Skip, what's next for VR and mental health? Are there emergent applications or innovations that have, you particularly excited? You just mentioned ubiquitous, like, ambiguity, which is great. But especially for like fostering resilience and recovery in veterans.
Well, I think we have a whole new generation of, number one, whole new generation of young people that are coming into the field that grew up with this technology, and I'm often humbled when I start to work more with the younger people that, they're half my age, but they honestly, I think they know twice as much as I do. And so we have a generation of enthusiastic people that are developing these kinds of applications, and they've got the tools to do it. They've got AI. AI is total game changer. I mean, you hear that everybody says that, there's nothing novel there. In the last 2 years, I mean, it's transformed productivity and content development and so on. I'm working with another company that is leveraging AI to actually generate content for people that's more customized to their needs. So it still has a ways to go to get that high fidelity, and motion-based 3D graphics, but that's coming down the pipe. So I think we're going to see dramatic transformations, and as I mentioned before with the VA, they are going full bore into this. And I mean, the technology has actually, I always used to say it's caught up with the vision. Now it's surpassing the vision. There are new things that we can build. We can create content, and we can measure the effects of that content on people, whether they're wearable device or tracking their facial expressions and inferring emotion from how they interact in some of these applications. There's just many ways that is transformative for healthcare. I mean, look at I love the game industry. I like playing video games myself, and I want that to be successful. But the real value is going to be, I think, in medicine and in education. Yeah. I think education is sort of the unsung area where, if you tell me in 10 years that kids are not going to be interacting with atoms or solar system processes or anything in VR to learn, to be able to visualize, to be able to construct things, I say you're crazy, because it's a perfect match for inspiring kids to learn things that in the past might have been very difficult for them to visualize. So a lot of good stuff to look forward to.
It is. And man, Skip, shout out to your publicist. When your name came across, I instantly said, like, yeah, I'm ready to try VR, because like I didn't know much about it, but after today, you really gave me a lot of insight into what it can do. And who knows, maybe VR will let me live out my dreams of being a backup dancer for Beyonce. But seriously though, the work you're doing is life changing, and I really appreciate you so much. And like the veteran, my fellow brothers and sisters in arms, like they appreciate this technology. And once they find out, through this podcast about this, they're going to be like beating down the doors of the VA to say, hey, can we get more of this? So, any final things you want to share before I let you go?
Well, let's all work to drag psychology kicking and screaming into the 21st century, and I think this technology, being an experiential technology, is well poised to help do that and to make a real difference for people that deserve our best efforts. And whether that's veterans or whether that's traumatized kids or whether it's people that have suffered significant injuries and are trying to recover their function, these are all areas we have sort of a moral commitment to do our best by. And so hopefully I'll be back with you in a year and talking about where, what we've done in the last year with Ubiquity, because I think there's going to be some significant advancements on the efforts that they're pursuing as well.
That's going to be the game changer right there. So I do look forward to a follow-up conversation after this one. And, I already invited you to do some more little side work. Hope you take me up on that invite too. So, all right, folks, that's our show for today. Huge thank you to Dr. Skip Rizzo for sharing his incredible insights and for reminding us that technology can do more than TikToks. It can transform lives. Make sure you check out the links in the show notes to learn more about Skip's work and the innovative tools making a difference in mental health care for veterans and beyond. And if today's episode inspired you, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Let's keep the transforming going. And until next time, this is Marcus Hart reminding you to stay strong, stay inspired, and stay on your journey. Many blessings, peace, and lots of love.
I stand for what you stand for. I'm at your door like the landlord. I can see the future, yeah, I fast forward. I get on the mic and I transform. Follow me, I'm in rare form. Follow me on this world tour. The asteroid that you can't avoid.